When I joined my job a little bit ago this past winter, there were very few things that I wanted out of the place. I was hoping to get a rotating schedule. I was working in the middle of the workday, and I had no life. And I thought, if they just rotated the schedule, then I could have one good day off a week, right? And my job's a union job, and there were people who just came in fresh out of the street, and they were getting the weekends. I'm stuck on Monday, Tuesday. They're getting the weekends. And I'm like, what the hell? Why are they getting the weekend? So I went to the union, and as a newer employee, you go through this probationary period where you're considered a supplemental employee, and it can last years. And I was told, because I'm this supplemental employee, there's nothing they could do for me. So then I asked about some other small issue, and I got the same line of bull. And it just seemed like anything that I asked, no matter how small it was, the union said, oh, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. And I kind of thought, what the hell am I paying to be in the union for anyways? What am I getting out of it? It seemed like I was getting nothing out of the deal, a raw end of the deal. I was paying into it. I wasn't getting anything out of it. And it was very, very frustrating. I wonder if James Harrison or Le'Veon Bell or Bryant, I wonder if they have experienced the same kind of thinking, the same thoughts. Biggest difference is I'm making around $30,000 a year. They're making millions. I'm Brian Crawford. You are listening to the River's Edge Radio Network. I am Pittsburgh's moral compass, your voice of reason among three rivers of chaos. You can hit us up at 412-407-2744. That's 412-407-2PGH. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at RiverTalkPGH. We're going to jump right into this Steelers situation. We talked about it last week with Sammy Toronto of Football in High Heels. Well, today we have Tim Benz of DKOnPittsburghSports.com. We have Tim over the phone right now. Tim, how are you?
Pretty good. 30,000 a year versus what? 30,000 a practice for those guys. Basically, is that how it works? Is that the comp you're trying to draw there?
Yeah, I think so. We're trying to. I understand the union grievances. I just feel like it might be a little bit of a different scenario. A little bit more money at play.
It is. It is, and I think it's different between the two guys, too. I don't really blame the union at all for Bell's situation, aside from what they did or did not get in the last CBA. The lack of starch shown by the union, to me, is rendered moot when Le'Veon Bell gets pinched for an offense, and then in this collectively bargaining agreement where he has, 3 more chances to not get suspended, or I guess 3 in his case, because he was basically put in the accelerator right away because there was a driving part of his offense. But when he's got multiple chances after that, and he flat out admits in that now deleted Instagram post that he smoked in December after getting initially arrested in August, that's on him. That's not on the union. As far as the union, what they did or didn't do, can or can't do for Harrison versus Goodell, that's a little bit more of a debate. But again, I just think that goes back to what happened to bargaining table back in 2011.
I agree, and I look at what they're doing here, and the players are upset. Obviously, they have a pretty bad CBA, if you think about it, but it was voted on, and I can understand, Steelers players having grievances with the CBA, being that the Steelers didn't go along with it, but it is a CBA. It's a collectively bargained agreement. That agreement is signed, and you have to stick to that agreement until a new agreement is made up. And you look at situations like with Brady's situation where he wanted to go to the Supreme Court and try to fight out the NFL. And yeah, that sounds great for labor in the short term because, we're getting our way. But what about when things change and then management decides to just disregard the CBA and go in their own direction, and they can then look back at these instances and say, well, we're not going to give you your cost of living adjustment. And that's for, across the board, because once a precedent is set in law, it can be applied to other unions as well.
Yeah, and I get the angle of it, as minimalist as it's felt, when we're talking about deflated footballs, or in this case now when it's accusations of illegal drug acquisition and usage, it takes on a different tone. I think the big difference between, for instance, the Deflategate situation and the Harrison situation is that the debate was over an accusation of in-game activity, not the debate over being asked to discuss. There were parameters that went into arguments about Tom Brady and whether or not he was going to talk to the league and the destruction of the cell phone and all that. But, he was most upset because he got suspended before the interview took place, and then they interviewed afterwards. As far as what happened with Harrison, this is about, trying to draw a conclusion over, even an interview in the first place. So there's a slight differential there. Either way, I do know that there's a greater union cause at foot here, but I just keep going back to it's hard for me to drum up a lot of sympathy when back in 2011 there was a lot of saber rattling over how Roger Goodell had too much power back then, and then the players were going to take it back. And then when money issues came to play and other things came up about padded practices and time in the off season and things of that sort that superseded it in the eyes of the collective, what did? They folded on the power issue. So this is something they gave back. Let's not rewrite history. And I think there's been a lot of that, as if it's like the Steelers were the only ones that bitched. That's not true. There were a lot of other teams and players that said that Goodell has too much authority, especially when the fines started to be levied against players for headshots. Because, that all started like in 2010 or so. And then when the lockout hit, that was a major function of the disagreements between the two sides was power for Goodell and handing out discipline for fines for blows to the head. But it went away when they started talking about pieces of the pie for the network TV deal, and it went away when they started talking about, time in the off season, padded practices, non-padded practices, length of camp, and so forth and so on. So they seeded on it before, and my belief is they'll do it again when stuff about the 18-game season comes up, the next collective bargaining agreement discussion about network or whatever. Maybe it's not even network by then, but TV revenue. And, the pot issue is going to be on the table, too. Yeah. And Ramon Foster went through a litany of things about health and equipment. And you watch. I just, again, think that the Goodell power thing will go on the back burner once more in the last year of the CBA discussions.
Well, the pot situation is in my opinion, it's comical. I mean, you're making millions of dollars a year, and you can't stop smoking pot. Is it really worth putting that kind of money on the line? And, you always hear these arguments that, it's a different kind of occupation and they mean so much more for their team. Well, to me, it's not a different situation. If anything, there's more money on the line. There's more at risk. You should care more about losing millions of dollars than somebody losing a minimum wage job. To me, it's not much to ask whether no matter what side of the issue you're on. I'm in favor of legalization, but even beyond that point, if the NFL decides that this is a policy that they're going to uphold, and you agree through the collective bargaining agreement that that's unacceptable behavior, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to maybe wait a few years. You're not going to be in the NFL for life. Put it aside for some big cash. I mean, to me, it's just ludicrous that this is even an issue among grown adults, but it seems to be an issue that some players just cannot get past.
Yeah, and if they think it's that big of a deal, I wonder how much leveraging will be done in favor of allowing pot.
Yeah.
And something else that will be given up on the back end as a result whenever the deal comes up again in 2025 or whatever it is that Ramon Foster was talking about. I mean, but my view on it is, from the pro-legalization point like you brought up, it's kind of like saying, well, it's perfectly safe to drive 75 on the highway, and the speed limit in my state is 75, but the speed limit in your state is 65, but this road is safer, so I should be able to drive 75. Well, no, you can't.
No.
You can give me all the reasons in the world, but on the books it says that you cannot. And just because, it's illegal in Colorado, that doesn't mean it's legal to smoke it while in Colorado if you're an NFL player based on the private rules. And that line gets blurred all the time. The opiate versus marijuana pain-killing debate gets blurred all the time. None of this has to do with anything beyond what the collective bargaining agreement says. And people who are in favor of legalization or trying to sympathize with the players can smudge it all they want, but it doesn't mean anything in the end.
Even if it is legal across the board, nationwide, you could still limit what your employees do. Look at healthcare employers, for example, where they can discriminate based on whether you're a smoker or not because of health practices and things like that, and setting an example. So even beyond that, your employer could still decide that they don't want to employ you if you have this drug in your system.
Or, like pilots can't have any alcohol in their blood, and not just, what the legal limit is to drive, but none whatsoever. They can't drink with whatever. It's 36, 24 hours before you fly a plane. You can't, if you're in the military and even though it's illegal to drink, maybe you're in a country that doesn't allow drinking. You can't drink while you're there. I mean, there are certain rules that, I've heard about from people in the military that don't make sense to those of us who are not in it, but you have to abide by it because you chose to be in the military. So you are not, even though you're fighting for other people's rights, you are not afforded some of the same rights that you're fighting for. It's just how it goes.
Brian Crawford with Tim Benz at riversedgepgh.com, Pittsburgh's voice for local music. I look at Harrison standing up against the league, and I understand that he is being often singled out by Roger Goodell, and there is a history between the two, but any union I've ever been a part of, even if it is a union where you have someone protecting you, the rule has always been that you comply with management and then you file a grievance and then you go from there. But you still have to do what they tell you. I mean, it's not like a situation where you're at free reign to do whatever you want because you have a union that's going to back you up. It's you comply with management because you're the employee, they're the boss, and after the fact, that's when you can apply for a grievance. You can get money back. There's different things you can go about. I don't know. This situation just seems ridiculous to me.
It's a unique situation because, in a lot of cases, even something like ours, for instance, I had one union grievance that I remember that never quite got all the way to the paperwork being filed. It got straightened out before then. But, if they took shows away from me, I can still recoup my money. Yeah, I missed the shows, but oh well. These are games that can't be gotten back. So, yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying about you got to comply, even though you can file a grievance, but you have to comply in the meanwhile. If he complies in the meanwhile and that results in him being suspended, you can't get those games back.
Sure.
Next year is going to be, 38, so those are 4 games maybe he's never able to play again. So because of that, I do think it makes it a little bit of a different situation. And we all try in every one of these deals that comes up with something that happens in terms of malfeasance of a player to try to relate it to our own menial lives and different specific fields of work, and it just can't be done. It's a unique situation.
It is a unique situation, and it's unique because you are with these people all of the time. You're part of a team. You're practicing. And my question for you, Tim, is who in the locker room, and I know that nobody's going to say anything publicly, but who in the locker room is just rolling their eyes, especially when it comes to the drug situations?
I don't think anybody's rolling their eyes at Harrison. As far as Bell goes, there's been more support this week than I think there should have been from the players. Everybody you talk to is still speaking in vagaries because they feel like they don't want to violate any potential agreement that has been made between Bell and the league, and I don't think they want to fan the flames. I think at this point they're willing to accept the 3-game suspension and then just move on. But I was talking to Roethlisberger when I was talking to Foster. I was kind of hoping for them to be a little bit more put off as opposed to blaming the league and talking again about the appeals process and all that, which they were griping about. Because, again, Bell was in the system and he got high in December. I mean, I could just see how it happened in my own head right now. He's staying clean through the season. Reggie Nelson takes him out at the knee. He says, I haven't smoked since December of 14. Well, you know what? That game was on December the 29th. He knows the season is done. He lights up a joint. I see that's how it played out. It's so obvious. So if that's the case, and he admitted as such on Instagram, why bother sticking up for him at that point? Why are you putting yourself in a situation to get into the positive? Forget about it. They knocked on my door at 5:37, or I couldn't get there after surgery. The fact that he had 1 or 2 more strikes to go to me means nothing because he so willingly did it in December by his own admission and then deletion after he got arrested or charged rather in August. He lost me right there.
Yeah, I just the whole thing just seems ridiculous. Just put down the weed. It's just to me, just put down the weed. You're making enough money. All right, Tim, you are on.
Especially because when before you get in the program, it's so easy to avoid the test. Every player I've talked to says you can smoke it almost whenever you want. Once you get in the system, then you have to stay away from it pretty much for good until you're out of the system or retire or whatever. But once you but it was on you to be that stupid to avoid the period of time where you're going to be tested and caught for the first time.
And don't they give you like multiple chances as well in the NFL? I know there's a process. It's not just one time in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you get busted, and then you get put into the system, and then you have you got to miss 3 more tests or 4 more tests, depending on how you got put in the system in the first place. So it's like 4 strikes and you're out. And that's why I keep saying the test is so lenient. I don't think the NFL is really trying to get caught out of the NFL. I think the NFL is trying to get idiots out of the NFL.
Yeah.
If you're so dumb that you can get caught 4 times doing the same thing when we make it this easy for you to not get caught, then we don't want you in our league, because you're also likely to be that stupid to do something else really dumb to make us look bad. Like get behind the wheel of a car drunk, hit your girlfriend, kill somebody, whatever. We want to get the idiots out of the league. We don't necessarily want to get the potheads out of the league.
Yeah, Tim, you've moved, just to give you a plug yourself, you've moved from Trib Live Radio to DK Pittsburgh Sports, and you're on every morning via the website and SoundCloud, correct?
Correct, yeah, and iTunes and Google Play. You can get it there through the app. We post all of our podcasts about 7:30 every morning, so you can download them commercial-free for the driving to work.
How's that working for you?
The schedule's weird. It's not like going back to the X with the old morning show schedule. I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is having everything done and loaded and ready to go at 7 is very different from having a rundown ready to go to live discuss things on the air at 6. I would take that old schedule any day as opposed to this one, because getting everything edited and cut, sound organized, and anything you want to say planned out and charted out to be 25 minutes commercial free, and then do that 2 or 3 times over in separate podcasts, interviews ready to go, things of that sort. It's a lot of planning that leads up to having everything posted and done by 7:30. So the schedule is different, but I'm enjoying doing it.
How do you like the difference between going live versus pre-recorded? Or since you are putting it out there at 7, you're kind of organizing everything ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about having everything pre-recorded is, if you have a massive screw-up, you can always go back and change it,
Yeah.
You got a little bit more room for creativity, and you're not beholden to a clock. All that stuff I like, but, you don't have the live crackle or spontaneity of doing anything live interactive. We got some tweets that you can go to, but even those are coming in the night before.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to the point where we start using phones or maybe live streaming. We're a month old into this.
Mm-hmm.
We already had about 100,000 listens, so we're happy about where we started off, and we're off to a great start, exceeding expectations. But once we get more sponsorship, once we get a little bit more time under our belt, maybe a more firm feel of the platform, we can go to live streaming or phone interactive, and if that comes, I will welcome it.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I love the show. I enjoy listening every day. So thank you, Tim. I
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Check out Tim at dk@pittsburghsports.com. Up next, we're going to talk more about unions. We're going to go into a development with a teacher union situation, and that's up next. You're listening to the River's Edge Radio Network.